There we go. Okay. So tonight I have the wonderful pleasure of talking to you all about personal preparedness. This is probably one of my favorite topics to talk about. I have been with the Philadelphia Health Department for 5 years. I have, done a numerous amount of jobs, but I have also, been an EMT. I have been a Medical Reserve Corps volunteer in Allegheny County, so in Pittsburgh. So I have, done the gambit of different things in that regard personal preparedness. I was also a Peace Corps volunteer. So, this really touches close to me in my heart because, I've always had to be prepared. You never know what's going to come around the corner and you never know what might be next. And you always have to remember what to be prepared for, especially wherever you're going to be, whether you're going to be here in Philly, whether you're going to go, down to the shore, whether you're going to go visit some family out in California. You never know what you're going to have to be prepared for. Well, especially now because California is experiencing blizzards. My goodness. I'm just going to talk to you all a little bit about personal preparedness today. And again, my name is Emma Hassman. My pronouns are she, they, and I am the logistics manager for the Philadelphia Department of Public Health. So let's get started on the basics of personal preparedness. So some quick basics of personal preparedness, some things that we like to touch on. If you don't remember anything else about what I talk about today, so I want you to remember 3 things. First, be informed. Remember, know about what's going around in your surroundings. Know how to get local alerts. I hope all of you have signed up for OEM's Ready Philadelphia alerts. These will let you know whenever there are severe storms going on, whether there are, special events happening, whether, the PES refinery is blown up, all of those things. So it's very important to, be informed, have that situational awareness, and learn about, what's going on. On top of that, know your local hazards. Are you in an area that might flood frequently, or are you in an area that's prone to snow? What about wildfires? Maybe you're going to move to the desert. Know your local hazards. And then the third thing is have a plan of how to deal with those things. Have a plan of how to get out of your house or your apartment. Have a plan of how to get out of your neighborhood. Have a plan of how to stay in place if you need to. So what's our catchy little jingle to remember all of this? Because, if we're doing any of this, we've got to have a catchy little jingle. Our first thing is what to have in your head, what to have in your hand, and what to have in your home. So first, what to have in your head. So in times of crises, we don't really think, we're not going to think through a complex plan or, complex solutions. That's why we have stop, drop, and roll. We're not thinking through, oh, let me learn about every single aspect of what's happening right now. We're thinking short little pieces right now. So what to have in your head? What are you going to plan out for your emergency or what you're going to deal with? So who will you contact? What contacts do you need in case of emergency? Write those down. How will you contact them? Are you going to text them? Are you going to call them? Where will you go? Do you have a place to go inside your neighborhood? What about outside your neighborhood? What if there's just an emergency just in the local vicinity and you need to get somewhere outside your neighborhood? How, all of those things. And then of course, how will you get there? Do you have a way to get there? Do you rely on SEPTA? What about a car? Thinking through all of these things. What about a bike? Do you walk? What if you can't use those things in an emergency? So these are steps that you kind of have to plan through in your head and think through. before an emergency even happens. So in the moment of emergency, like I said, it's very hard to remember everything that you need to do or those numbers that you need to remember. So this is just an example form. It's on FEMA's website, and don't worry, I'm going to send Satori all of the links for all the documents that I'm going to show here and extras. So these are some things that you can write down. You have, your out of town contacts, your neighborhood meeting place, your regional meeting place, some work information, school information. I know I'm really bad about this, but I just recently put my doctor's phone number in my cell phone. It's terrible, but I'm not going to remember that off the top of my head. So writing that down somewhere, all of these phone numbers that you're going to need in an emergency, writing them down, having them somewhere so that, it's there for you, it's there for your family, it's there for anybody that needs to know it. And it's right there so that in an emergency, if you have to remember it, it's somewhere so that you can put your mind on more important things. There are a lot of other documents and a lot of other things to write down. If you've been with the Medical Reserve Corps for a long time, you might recognize this document, but it's a health information card. And if you can see on here, it has first emergency contact, second emergency contact is someone out of town, because they might not be affected by the emergency, but also any medical conditions that you might have, and these kind of things that you're not going to remember in an emergency, or if something happens to you, is already written down so that first responders can help you. So kind of easy ways to remember this important information that is needed during an emergency. So the next step that we're going to go on is what to have in your hand. So there's always that chance that you might have to evacuate with your go bag. So using the chat, what are some items that you should include in your go bag? I'm going to give you just a few minutes to kind of type in the chat or what some items that should be included in your go bag. Water is very important. Yes, first aid kit, definitely. Oh, extra medications, yes, for sure. Oh, I like tourniquet. Well, only if you know how to use it, that's for sure. Oh, socks, yes. Non-perishable foods, yeah, for sure. Don't put some cheese in there if you're not going to check it. Yes, those are all great. Portable charger, extra clothes. Yes, definitely all important. So other things, cash, definitely important. Your ID cards, copies of important documents. Sometimes, you might not be able to find those important documents, but making copies of those important documents and keep those in your go bag so that you can use your copies, in your daily life, always good. So definitely make sure to have medications and any medical supplies that you might need in your go bag ready to go. Copies of important documents, you can keep those on a flash drive or paper copies, both work. Cash, because if there's a mass power outage or something like that, ATMs might not be working or banks might be closed. So making sure that you have cash, bottled water and ready to eat food, flashlights and batteries, crank radio, a local map if you're not familiar with the place, or if you're in someplace new, any personal items that you might need, definitely a cell phone charger. Like, come on, we all know that we rely so much on our cell phones these days, so making sure that we include that. And then, if you have any children with you, if you have any pets with you, make sure you're preparing for that, because it's not just us anymore, it's somebody else with us. So making sure you're preparing not just for you, but for anybody or any pets, anybody that's with you. And the other thing is that this is your go bag. So, I'm not going to put something in my go bag that's not useful to me. I'm not going to put clothes in there that don't fit me. I'm not going to put, things in there that I'm not going to use. Everything in there should be tailored to me. So make sure to tailor it to you. Make sure the clothes are your size, make sure the mask fits you, make sure that you only have things in there that you can use. So make sure that it is your bag. So obviously the Office of Emergency Management definitely puts out checklists all the time. And so whenever you're building this bag, make sure that you're building it to fit you, and make sure that you are thinking about everything that you need, everything your family needs, and everything that suits your needs. Like, I'm not going to put in like a meal ready to eat or an MRE that like has chicken in it if I'm a vegetarian. That makes no sense. Here's a home emergency kit checklist, or like a shelter in place kit, which will lead into our next thing, what to have in your home. So this talks about, the first thing on there says water, 1 gallon per person per day for at least 3 days, which is a lot of water. So whenever you're building your go bag, you're probably not going to be able to carry that much water, but your shelter in place kit, you're going to be able to have that much water. So thinking about what can you actually physically carry versus what can you actually keep in your home. So what to have in your home. So the current advisement right now is you want to be ready to shelter in place with at least 3 days worth of supplies. So like I just said, you want to have 1 gallon of water per living thing per day. So it's me and my 5 dogs. I've got to have 1 gallon of water per me and for every single one of those dogs for 3 days. And make sure that I have, enough food as well to keep us all, alive and kicking for those 3 days. I want to make sure that we have enough supplies, to keep us busy, to keep us active, whatever, for those 3 days as well. Also, whenever you're thinking about sheltering in place, identify a room with few doors or windows. You don't want to have anything coming in through the window to harm anybody. You want to make sure that there's a nice space that is closed off if any like rubble or anything were to come in. Also, move hazardous materials. If, let's say, you are storing gasoline in your house, make sure to move that away from where you're sheltering so that, that's not going to affect you or your family whenever you are sheltering in place. Move all of that hazardous material out of the way, keep a nice safe space for you, your family, your loved ones, anything like that. Another thing to think about is know how to shut off gas, water, and electricity. One of the things on that stay-at-home checklist was a wrench, because it's really important to know how to shut that off. You don't want gas running if, there's a chance that, something might spark and start a fire when you're already dealing with something else. And the other thing, like, I currently live in an apartment. How am I going to get into this apartment if the power's turned off? Knowing those kind of things, how am I going to, stay in my space, the place that I'm calling home, when there is an emergency? So something else to think about, do you have any electricity dependent items that you have in your home that you're going to need to take care of? So just kind of thinking about what to have in your home during an emergency and what do you need to take care of that. So the next thing we're going to talk about is safe food. And then we're going to go into safe water, because of course, if there's an emergency, there's always that chance that, you might need to check your food to say, hey, what's the safe food and how am I going to actually am I going to actually be able to eat this? So first, if there's an emergency, keep your food in covered containers. You don't want it to get contaminated with anything that's going on. Like if you're in a flood or anything like that, keep it in covered containers. We don't want any contaminants. Next, keep cooking and eating utensils clean. So that is, don't wash them in flood waters. Don't kind of cross-contaminate. We want to keep those things clean. If there's any food that comes in contact with contaminated floodwaters, throw that stuff away. The thing is with floodwaters is it will pick up anything along the way. So make sure that you throw away that food, because you don't want anything that floodwater has brought along. Make sure to throw away any food that has been at room temperature for at least 2 hours or more. You don't want to have to deal with being sick with food poisoning at the same time you're dealing with an emergency. That would just be terrible. And then again, throw away any food that has an unusual odor, color, or texture. The worst time to play food roulette is whenever you're dealing with an emergency or like some sort of disaster that you're having to like stay at home or shelter in place with. So again, don't play food roulette. If it has an unusual odor, color, or texture, toss it. And then if you have to use ready-to-feed formula with a baby or an infant, if you must mix infant formula, use bottled water or boiled water as a last resort, and it is completely fine to breastfeed during an emergency. It's actually recommended, but if you have to use formula, use ready-to-feed formula. And some big don'ts. Don't eat foods from cans that are swollen, dented, or corroded. Even if the product might look good, again, we're not playing food roulette. We don't want anybody to get sick during this. Don't eat any food that even looks or smells abnormal, even if the food looks normal. So again, if you're getting weird smells, if it looks weird, don't chance it. And then lastly, don't let garbage accumulate inside, both for fire and sanitation reasons. Like you don't want to get sick because of it, and you don't want to risk any reasons for like a fire or anything like that with all the stuff inside. So what comes after food? Water. So, like I already said, you want to make sure you have 1 gallon per living thing per day. So that includes pets, that includes children, and that includes you. So make sure that you have 1 gallon per living thing per day. Children, nursing mothers, and sick people might need more water. So you want to make sure to work that into your plans that, if you have a couple kids at home, or, maybe like you're taking care of your sick friend or something, that you might need to have a little bit more water in your plan than, if it was just you chilling at home. If there is a medical emergency or there is, something happening that might require like somebody to get sick, like let's say that they ate something that looked a little bit abnormal, that might need a little bit more water. And then of course, warmer climates need more water. Obviously in the summer, we're drinking more water than we are in the winter because, it's hotter, we're sweating out, all of that stuff. So again, when it's warmer, we're drinking more water than in the winter. If something happens, we're put under a boil water advisory. Don't ration your water unless you're told to by, us at the health department, by PWD, anything like that. We will, the authorities will try to get more water to you when necessary, but it's never good to ration water because you're more likely to dehydrate yourself and hurt yourself if you're trying to ration water. So make sure to just keep drinking water. And then of course, drink water that is not contaminated first before drinking gross stuff. Drink water that is not contaminated first. And then don't drink carbonated or caffeinated beverages instead of drinking water. You don't want to get dehydrated. That's the big issue, because that of course can make you sick and lead to something worse. Okay, so let's say that something happens and you are told to evacuate or you are told to leave. So is your vehicle ready to go? So something else to think about is, preparing your vehicle. So do you have enough gas to leave, like right now? Let's say something happened right now. Are you able to leave with as much gas in your tank as you have right now? It's always good to have like at least a quarter of a tank of gas, if not more. Do you have jumper cables in your car? What about weather preparedness materials? Snow tires are good in the winter. Having those, sun visors in the summer. Kitty litter is always good in the winter because it helps your tires grab onto stuff. Blankets, non-perishable food. My mom always would throw those granola bars in the car in the winter because she always was terrified that we'd get stuck in a snowdrift. So making sure that you have blankets or some sort of non-perishable food in there. Maps, of course. You never know whenever you're phone GPS is going to crap out, so making sure you have maps or something like that. A first aid kit, a car charger for your cell phone, stick that in there, get your car charger. And then of course a flashlight. You don't want to get stuck on the highway. Don't want to get stuck on 95 in the middle of the night, have your car die. Never want to do that. So making sure you have some of all of that in your car. There's always some other things that you can include, anything that's, special to you, special to your family, and things that are important to your car. Everybody's car is different, so making sure you have those items that you need to keep your car running. So a lot of us have furry friends or, scaled friends. We don't judge here. So making sure that you are preparing for your pet is very important. There are special things that, pets need that we don't. And especially if you're going to go shelter in place with a pet, there are some things that you need to think about. The big picture about pets is you want to practice. You don't want your first time out with your pet is when there's going to be a disaster. You don't want the fire alarm to be going off and, little furry out here running and trying to hide under your bed. You don't want to have to lure them out with kibble whenever the fire alarm's going off. That's not a great start to a disaster. So you want to make sure that you are constantly practicing with your pet, making sure like, here, we're going to evacuate. We're going to practice evacuating, take you in the car. The first time they're yowling, maybe the second time they're yowling too, and then maybe the third time they're chilling out a little bit. So what are some other things that are good for preparing with pets? Ooh, say that 5 times fast. Okay, so a picture of you with your pet. If for some terrible reason you get separated, then it says like, hey, this is my pet. This is me, Coco, or this is me and, Mr. Kibbles, whatever. This is me and my pet together. See, it's mine. Always having that picture of you with your pet. Of course, medical records, having that form of identification, making sure you have copies of their medical records, their vaccination and their identification together. If there is a shelter that, pops up and, you're able to take your pet to that shelter, shelters usually won't take pets if they're not vaccinated. So there are, those requirements for pets, making sure you have all of those medical records and that identification together so that you can take your pet to that shelter. Of course, a carrier, a leash, a collar, so that, you can actually transport your pet to wherever you're going, and making sure that everybody is taken care of that way. Of course, any medication. You need to make sure that they have their medication that they need, the food that they need, their little water bowl, all of that. And pets are just like us. They will get bored. Make sure you have toys and treats. You don't want a bored cat in a shelter. That thing's going to get so loud so fast. So make sure that you have things to keep that cat entertained. Make sure you have things to keep that dog entertained. Same with, the Komodo dragon or bearded dragon, not Komodo dragon, bearded dragon. So make sure you have all those things together. And then, of course, bowls, they have to have something to eat out of. And litter for a cat or pee pads for a dog. Make sure they have those things together so that, your pet is taken care of, even during a disaster, even during an emergency. So we talked about pets, and now we're going to talk about kids. So if there is, an item that is specific to your child or the child you're caring for, that's what you're going to want. But obviously, there are some general things that we can talk about. So, just whenever you're thinking about preparing for any children, make sure obviously you have any medical supplies that you need. If they need an medical ID bracelet, or if they have, anything special, make sure that you have that. I know that for children, there are different dosages that are needed. So make sure that you have any medication that you need. Of course, if you are bringing a baby or an infant or anything like that, make sure to bring any baby supplies you need. Get that diaper bag together, get that stroller. If you have to evacuate from someplace, make sure that you have a car seat together, so that everything is together. just like all of us, make sure that there's a toy. Toys are very important, and even for us, but make sure that there is a toy there. And again, favorite stuffed animal, favorite anything. Disasters and emergencies are traumatizing for everybody, even us, even if we won't admit it to anybody. But having something there to help mitigate whatever is going on, making the child feel better, making this not as traumatizing will do so much. And just having like their favorite stuffed animal there can make a lot of difference. Remember, for our go bag, we have change of clothes. Make sure they have a change of clothes, onesies for babies, more clothes for older kids. If you're working with a baby, make sure there's baby medications or like toothpaste, wipes, all sorts of things for kids. The other thing, if you're going to a shelter, we've been through COVID. Well, we're still going through COVID. Make sure there's child-size masks. Make sure there's masks for yourself too, but make sure there's child-size items because they're not just small adults. They're, completely different. So let's talk about some special considerations whenever you're planning. So, or whenever you're preparing for a disaster. So obviously, if you have like any medical equipment, there are like certain groups that you can share with that you have medical equipment and you need to be on special backup power. Like I think it's Medicaid, don't quote me on that. But making sure that you have special like considerations so that you can get on special backup power, or making sure that you have extra batteries for that medical equipment. Special dietary food, making sure that if you need special food or certain foods to pack that in your go bag or in your shelter at home kit. There are like making sure that if you have refrigerated medication, bringing a cooler or ice packs to have that in there, having that medical alert bracelet or extra medication if you need it. I know that it's difficult to get these things. I have been there, but working with your primary care or your doctor or whoever you can to get these things put in place to make you feel safer during an emergency can really take a lot of anxiety off of you. And then of course, like I said, it is important to include comfort items for you, for your children, for whoever's children you're caring for your pets, for whoever. Disasters and emergencies can be very traumatizing. So making sure you have comfort items for, whoever will be there with you to help you go through this and help you cope with whatever's happening. So kind of hearing through all of this, it seems like, preparing is a lot and that it's going to cost a lot and you're going to have to go on Amazon and get the, $100 go kit. And that is not at all what I am saying, because you can make a go bag with very cheap. So I want to talk to you a little bit about low cost preparedness, because there are things that you can do very easily to make sure that you are using very little funds to make your go bag and make it worth your time. So of course, know which disasters are common in your area. If you are not, in a wildfire prone area, don't get items that are going to prepare you for a wildfire. If you are not going to be, prone to a tsunami, then don't get items that are going to prepare you for a tsunami, right? Also sign up for emergency alerts. That's a free way to prepare yourself. Then you have situational awareness of anything that's going to happen, and you are staying aware of anything that's going around. You are already, light years ahead of anybody that is not signed up for those emergency alerts, and they're free. And then of course, check out free programs in the area. The Philadelphia Department of Public Health holds free programs, and the Office of Emergency Management also holds workshops where they will even help you build your kit, give you free items, things like that. The Philadelphia Fire Department, they will give out free smoke detectors and free carbon monoxide detectors. So just look around, and there are free things to build your go kit and your stay-at-home kit very easily. So maintaining your kits is also, very important, because if you build one, you're like, this is great, I did it. Well, what if things expire? What if things change? You want to make sure that your kits are good to go whenever an emergency happens. So a good, rule of thumb is to update twice a year or as needed. So whenever the clocks change, is a good time to update your kit. So that way you always remember. And then of course, as needed, let's say something changes in your life and you know that you'll need to update your kit. Let's say that you just got put on a new medication. That'll be a good time to update your kit. Or you just maybe got something new, good time to update your kit. Items that are relevant, making sure that you only have relevant items in there. Maybe you have some really, really great action figure. This may be not so relevant. I'm a really big plant lover. If I unblurred my screen right now, you would see plants all over the background. However, those are not relevant for my kit. I'm not going to include them in my Go kit as much as I want to. And then of course, making sure all of your medical forms, all of your IDs, all of those forms stay updated as well, keeping copies of all those files. So insurance, of course, unfortunately, plays a lot into emergencies and disasters. So you got to remember, if insurance is going to get involved at all, making sure to take pictures of all important and high cost items. And as part of your documentation, have copies of all paperwork that is needed. So having all of that together will already put you, one step ahead if anything is to happen to, your house, your stuff, anything like that. Because unfortunately, dealing with insurance is just something that will happen after the fact and will just, add anxiety to the whole situation. So just having those along with your, IDs, your medical records, all of that can just take a little bit of anxiety off the top whenever you are planning and, preparing for everything. So here's just a little graphic that FEMA puts out that kind of talks about different ways that you can prepare. Of course, we kind of talked about signing up for alerts and warnings, making a plan, practicing emergency drills is always great. You are already getting involved in your community by being a part of the Medical Reserve Corps. But of course, you can plan with your neighbors, know your evacuation routes, assemble supplies, and do a bunch of other fun things. So I just like to throw this in here because, you can constantly prepare and you can always, you can keep preparing every day. So if you've been on an airplane recently, you probably heard the flight attendants talk about masks dropping down. And if you have a small child or someone who needs help, that you need to put your mask on first. This is also used in many emergency agencies, that you can't help others until you've helped yourself or until you feel safe and secure. So obviously this implies with personal preparedness as well. So the best thing that I like about personal preparedness is that with personal preparedness, I feel confident knowing that I am prepared, that I can now go out and respond and help others because I am prepared for an emergency. I am, ready to go if something was to happen. I've helped my friends and my family also be ready. So, I am ready. I've put my mask on so I can help others put their mask on. And so, that's what I like to end this with is that, whenever you're responding to an emergency, you want to know that your family and your friends and your loved ones are prepared and being taken care of. So that's why personal preparedness is so important. You feel confident responding, knowing that your loved ones are safe and taken care of. And of course, I have to end with a beautiful photo of our MRC volunteers in action. So, be confident that your loved ones are being taken care of with their personal preparedness. So that's all I have for tonight. So any questions? How often are you checking the bags for expiration dates on foods, meds, clothing, things like that? So, usually I check twice a year. just, when the clock changes, you check your bags for things like that. And yeah, like Steven said, you can check every 3 months along with the changing of the seasons. It's just whatever is good for you, good for your family, everything like that. Whatever works for you and your situation. As long as you're checking it multiple times a year to make sure that you're keeping everything updated with your situation.
Thank you, Emma, so much. I've just been looking at the chat just to make sure we didn't miss any questions or anything like that. And I think you've hit everyone's questions or answered everyone's question. I do see some questions about the recording. I will definitely send everyone a recording. And you guys can always feel free to check any of our virtual trainings out on our MRC YouTube page. All of the recordings are posted on there. So if, I for whatever reason missed you in the round that I'm sending out the emails for the recording, you can always find all of our recordings for our trainings on the Philadelphia Medical Reserve Corps YouTube page, just so you guys have that as a reference and a resource. Let me just see, someone else said something. Oh, they just said thank you so much, Emma. I also want to, second that. I really, really appreciate you giving us this training today. Very insightful, very helpful for a lot of people. It seemed like everyone learned a lot. And if you guys have any other questions, feel free to shoot me the questions. I'll, of course, pass them off to Emma and let you guys know what she has to say. But thank you so much for joining us this evening. This is a great training. We hope to, provide more of these for you guys in the future. And we just thank you for your time. And thanks again, Emma.
Yes, thank you all so much. I love giving this training. I have my go bag right over here. So yes,
I have mine too.
Thank you all so much. Thank you all so much. I hope you go and go make yourself your own go bag. I will send links to all of the documentation or all of the plans that I showed in the presentation. And yes, I can prepare you for the zombie apocalypse. All of this actually is helpful for the zombie apocalypse, because if you're prepared for this, you can be prepared for the zombie apocalypse. So you're all good on that. Promise.
I think with this training, we're pretty much well prepared for anything life has to throw at us at this moment. All right, thanks everyone. As always, I'll hang out, just a few minutes later. If anybody has any questions or if you want to talk to me about anything, I'll be here. But other than that, I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and you'll hear from more from us soon. So more to come for sure. All right, and thank you. Feel free if you need to, you can go ahead and sign off. Like I said, I'll hang out for questions. All right, looks like everyone's getting off. Like Emma. Someone wanted to say hi.
Hi.
All right, I guess we can give it just one more minute, but it doesn't look like anybody has any other questions. All right, I'm going to stop recording now.